If you want to ruin your golf swing, just grip the club as hard as you can. Or, I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to absolutely bomb a presentation, script every single word.
Yeah, write it all down, memorize it, and just refuse to deviate by a single syllable.
Exactly. And this is a paradox that athletes and, top performers know really well. Your best performance, the absolute upper limit of what you are capable of doing, it only unlocks the exact moment you give up control.
Right, because trying harder, like white-knuckling your way through a problem, it actually degrades your ability.
It really does. The
Yeah.
paradox is that letting go isn't about giving up. It's about trusting the immense amount of work you've already put in and just, allowing your instincts to take the wheel.
Which completely shatters everything we are
Really?
taught about productivity and success, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%.
We are conditioned from childhood to believe that linear effort, so more sweat, more anxiety, more micromanagement, directly correlates to better results. But peak performance is a completely different neurological state. It demands that you step aside from your own anxious, calculating, highly critical mind.
And that mental shift is the entire focus of our deep dive today. We are exploring this brilliant essay titled The Interior Battle on Letting Go and Showing Up.
It's such a good read.
It really is. Our mission today is to uncover exactly what is standing between you, the listener, and your most meaningful work. And we're pulling from an incredibly diverse stack of sources for this.
Yeah, we've got Stoic philosophy, raw military history, sports psychology, and literature.
All to map out this invisible internal battlefield.
And we really need to contextualize why this is so critical for you right now in this specific cultural moment. I mean, we are swimming in a world of absolute information overload.
We're all completely drowning in it.
Right. So the modern default state is to feel overwhelmed. We just freeze up under the weight of endless choices and we overthink every single move until we paralyze ourselves.
Yeah, analysis paralysis.
Exactly. So this deep dive is about slicing through that noise. We're going to examine the mechanics of our own self-sabotage, why we unconsciously manufacture our own obstacles, and, most importantly, how to finally step out of our own way.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the Stoics actually had a very precise diagnostic term for this tendency to get in our own way.
Right, Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, he called it hypolepsis. It's this profound realization that the crush of circumstances we complain about, the suffocating pressure, the stress, the insurmountable odds of daily life, it isn't actually an external reality.
It's all internal.
Entirely generated by our own assumptions. I actually look at it like wearing a virtual reality headset while playing a survival horror game.
Well, that's a great way to put it.
Right, because your physiological response is 100% real.
Yeah.
Cortisol is flooding your system, your palms are sweating, your heart rate is spiking.
Your fight or flight response is fully activated by the monsters chasing you.
Exactly. You feel completely trapped. But if you just reach up and pull the headset off, you realize you're just standing in an empty, quiet room. The obstacle isn't in the room at all.
Your own mind is generating the monster.
Yes. The obstacle is interior, which means the only possible solution is interior too.
And the mechanism behind that VR analogy is exactly how our brains process modern stress. I mean, the human amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is incredibly bad at distinguishing between a genuine physical threat to our lives and a purely imagined social or professional failure.
So it treats a bad email like a tiger attack.
Exactly. A looming deadline or a difficult conversation triggers the exact same biological panic as a predator in the woods.
Wow.
So once we accept that the ultimate enemy is our own biology and our own assumptions, we really have to look closely at how that internal enemy operates. Because it almost never announces itself as outright cowardice. It is highly adaptive.
It's a shapeshifter, and since the battlefield is internal, we have to recognize the disguise, right?
What's fascinating here is how the author, Stephen Pressfield, conceptualizes this force. He gives it a name. He calls it resistance.
Resistance, okay.
Yeah, and to illustrate how insidious it is, he uses this visceral, terrifying story of night fighting in Jerusalem.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Right, so you have soldiers and commanding officers moving through the rubble, and suddenly the entire advance halts. They go completely still. They hide in the shadows.
Just completely freeze up.
Exactly. And these soldiers are not cowards. They are highly trained, and they are justifiably afraid. I mean, the house they need to breach across the street has just swallowed 6 of their friends and returned none.
Oh, man, that is horrifying.
Any sane human being would be terrified to cross that street. But the brutal mechanical reality of that tactical situation is that hesitation is deadly.
Right, because if you stop moving, you're a target.
Yes. A perfectly understandable 60-second pause to catch your breath and gather your courage quickly morphs into 20 minutes of waiting.
Yeah.
And because fear compounds in the brain, that 20 minutes crystallizes into 2 hours of absolute stalling.
Wow.
The enemy is no longer the opposing force in the house.
Wow.
The enemy is the commanding officer's own hesitation.
Okay, I hear that military example, but it's hard to map a life or death firefight onto my Tuesday morning commute.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, most of us listening to this right now aren't dodging sniper fire in the rubble. We're sitting at desks or commuting on trains, trying to launch a small business, writing a thesis. If hesitation kills a soldier, for me sitting at my laptop, the enemy probably looks a lot more boring.
Oh, it definitely does.
It probably looks like me reorganizing my inbox for 2 hours.
And that is the most dangerous part of resistance. For us, resistance wears formal wear. It disguises itself as busyness.
Formal wear. I like that.
Yeah, it masquerades as responsible preparation. Rearranging your computer files into perfect folders, answering a string of low-priority emails so you feel productive, or, spending 3 weeks optimizing the perfect morning routine.
Guilty.
Right. All of that triggers a dopamine hit in the brain. It feels like work. But it is a highly sophisticated, biologically driven form of stalling. You are pacing back and forth in front of the target building while the novel goes unwritten, or the difficult feedback is avoided, or the creative project is delayed.
So we're essentially hacking our own brain's reward system to trick ourselves into thinking we're moving forward while we're actually standing completely still.
Exactly. And that biological trick leads us right into what the author Ryan Holiday, drawing on the Roman philosopher Seneca, calls the velvet rut.
The velvet rut.
Yeah, it's a state of existence where your life is so precisely, meticulously arranged around comfort, predictability, and ease that it masquerades as true contentment.
Because it feels nice.
It feels incredibly nice. The velvet is soft, but it is still a rut. You're trapped in a groove, and the plush comfort of that groove is the exact mechanism blinding you to the fact that you aren't moving toward your actual potential.
I want to ask you, the listener, directly. Are you doing this right now? Are you endlessly optimizing your routine, your software, your desk setup, just to avoid doing the actual terrifying, meaningful work?
It's a tough question to answer, honestly.
It is, and the sources bring up this chilling warning from Seneca regarding this exact behavior. He observed that human beings are not static creatures. The moment we stop growing, we literally begin dying.
Yeah, and it isn't a poetic metaphor.
No. Neurologically, cellularly, spiritually, atrophy sets in the moment you choose the velvet rut. It's happening right now, while you're reading those unimportant emails or sitting in a mandatory meeting you didn't even need to attend. We are actively trading our finite, unrecoverable lives for comfortable, busy work.
Well, the human brain is evolutionarily wired to seek out calorie-preserving comfort. In a prehistoric environment, conserving energy kept you alive.
Sure, that makes sense.
But in a modern environment with zero scarcity, that evolutionary drive to stay comfortable becomes a lethal trap for human potential. Escaping the velvet rut requires overriding our own biology.
And how do we do that?
It requires a very specific, potent combination. A profound, burning desire coupled with relentless, completely unglamorous discipline.
Okay, so if comfort is blinding us, the only way to break that spell is if we want something else more than we want to be comfortable.
Exactly.
Let's look at the legendary author Toni Morrison when she was writing her first novel. Her routine is a perfect case study for this. She was working full-time as a senior editor in New York during the day. She would take this long train commute home to Connecticut, cook dinner for her 2 young children, put them to bed, and then...
And only then.
Right. Only then, at 11 o'clock at night, when most people are just collapsing from exhaustion, she would sit down to write. The author Robert Greene witnessed this kind of obsessive dedication early in his career, and he famously called it superhuman.
Greene's observation is striking, but we really need to reframe how we view Morrison's routine.
How so?
Because labeling it superhuman gives the rest of us an out. It implies she had some mutant gene for energy that we lack. In reality, it was the ultimate expression of being fully unapologetically human.
Oh, I see.
She was tuning in to what the author Sarah Ban Breathnach calls the whispers of our authentic selves. Toni Morrison wanted to manifest that specific story so intensely that she refused every single perfectly reasonable excuse not to.
And she had a mountain of valid excuses.
A massive mountain. She was a tired, working single mother with a brutal commute. but her psychological need to bring that work into reality completely overrode the biological demand to go to sleep.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though, because when we hear about grinding out a novel at midnight, the word discipline gets thrown around.
Hmm.
And for a lot of us, discipline has a terrible PR problem.
It really does.
We think of it as a form of self-punishment. We imagine discipline as forcing yourself to eat nothing but plain steamed broccoli for the rest of your life. It just sounds miserable. So I have to wonder, does attacking a goal every single day, dragging yourself to the desk when you are exhausted, does it actually have to be a miserable grind?
That is the prevailing myth of our culture. But Robert Greene addresses this misconception head-on. He points out that the habit of engaging in deep, focused work every single day is not a miserable grind. It is neurologically fulfilling.
Really fulfilling.
Yes, daily practice is not glamorous. It does not generate viral highlight reels for social media. But that quiet, unobserved space is where the human brain actually operates maximally.
Interesting.
When you engage in disciplined practice, you enter a flow state. You quiet the noise of the ego. There is a deep, sustaining satisfaction in simply showing up for yourself consistently, devoid of an audience.
You know, we often hear people use the cliche that discipline is like building a house brick by brick, but that always felt a bit hollow to me. Reading through these sources, it feels much more like forging steel.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
When a blacksmith is hammering a blade, those repeated, unglamorous hammer strikes, the friction, the heat, the sheer repetitive force, that is what actually aligns the molecular structure of the metal. Without the constant hammering, the steel is brittle. Discipline is the hammer aligning your character.
And that molecular alignment is a brilliant way to understand the source's illustration of U.S. soccer legend Carly Lloyd.
Oh, yes. Her story is incredible.
She famously viewed her incredible career in two distinct halves. The first half was defined almost entirely by her immense natural talent. But talent, as she quickly realized, is just the opening bid.
Right. It gets your foot in the door.
It gets you an invitation to the table, but it cannot sustain you under pressure. The second half of her career, the years where she faced intense professional struggles, benchings, doubt, but ultimately secured her legacy as a champion, that required the hammer of intense discipline.
Yeah.
Talent was her opening bid, but character, forged through unglamorous, daily molecular alignment, was her closing argument.
So we established that discipline aligns our character, but that forging process requires intense heat. It requires friction. If we truly want to reach peak performance, it becomes obvious that we have to fundamentally alter our relationship with difficulty, and more importantly, our relationship with fear.
Because we spend our lives trying to engineer fear out of the equation.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can look at a profound historical observation made by John Adams. He noted that great characters are simply not formed in the calm, easy, predictable moments of life.
They're formed in the fire.
Yes, by contending with severe difficulties, great necessities call out great virtues. This isn't just an American founding principle, it's the core operating system of Stoicism. The Stoics didn't just grit their teeth and tolerate hardship, they actively leaned into it.
Because they understood the mechanics of adversity.
Exactly. Friction is the only mechanism that sharpens the blade.
You see that perfectly embodied in Marcus Aurelius. This is a man who endured literal plagues that decimated his population, devastating border wars, betrayals by his closest generals, and the unimaginable grief of losing several of his own children.
It's hard to even fathom that level of stress.
It really is. Yet through all of that, he realized that what feels like an absolute world-ending disaster in the present moment is often the exact raw material needed to construct who we are meant to become. The obstacle isn't blocking the path. The obstacle is the path.
He essentially discovered the psychological concept of stress inoculation centuries before modern psychology. He came to understand that good fortune is not the absence of tragedy. Having an easy life where nothing goes wrong leaves you incredibly fragile. True good fortune is a capacity you manufacture for yourself in how you respond to chaos.
It's a skill you build.
Yes, the pain you experience doesn't just hurt. It gets actively metabolized by the brain into wisdom, perspective, and unbreakable resilience.
It's easy to look at a bronze statue of a Roman emperor and think, well, he was just a demigod. He was built completely different, completely immune to human anxiety. But there's a detail in the sources that completely shatters that illusion.
The story about his elevation to emperor.
Yes. When Marcus Aurelius first found out he was going to be elevated to emperor, he didn't throw a parade, he wept.
He was devastated.
He was fundamentally terrified of the burden. He didn't want the absolute power. He wanted to stay in his quiet philosophical life and just read his books. His mentors essentially had to drag him forward and force him to put on the purple cloak of leadership.
It strips away all the mythology and leaves us with a deeply relatable human being who is staring down a terrifying responsibility.
It's exactly like being offered a massive promotion at your company, one that you know you earned, but it completely terrifies you because of the sheer weight of the expectations.
You just want to shrink back into your comfort zone.
Right. And the brilliant lesson here isn't that you have to eradicate fear to do great things. It's the realization that true bravery is the act of stepping forward in the presence of fear, not the absence of it.
That's a huge distinction.
Marcus Aurelius put the purple cloak on while he was crying. He did the job anyway.
Showing up, despite the terror, is the victory. You embrace the friction. But of course, the moment you decide to act, you introduce a brand new variable.
What's that?
What happens when you inevitably fail? Because make no mistake, if you step out of the velvet rut and into the arena, you are going to mess up. You will make glaring errors.
It's statistically guaranteed. If you swing the bat, you will eventually strike out. So how do we actually process that failure without letting it send us running right back to the comfort of the rut?
Well, the sources introduce a highly practical framework for managing failure, and it comes from the game of golf.
Golf. Okay.
Yeah. Golf is fundamentally not a game of perfect. It is physically impossible to play a perfect round. The greatest players in the world will hit the ball into the water, they will end up in the sand, they will miss seemingly easy putts.
It happens to everyone.
Exactly. It is, by its very design, a game of misses. The entire objective is simply to miss the best. The player who manages their inevitable mistakes the most efficiently, who recovers the fastest without losing their composure, is the one who puts on the green jacket.
This raises an important question, though. When we miss the mark in our own lives, whether it's a blown presentation that we over-rehearsed, a failed diet, or snapping at a partner because we were stressed, our immediate knee-jerk instinct is to mercilessly beat ourselves up.
Oh, absolutely. We replay the mistake on a loop in our heads.
Right. If beating ourselves up is our default setting, how do we recover quickly, like a pro golfer stepping up to the next shot?
The critical insight from sports psychology is that self-flagellation is entirely counterproductive to performance. Beating yourself up consumes massive amounts of cognitive load. It degrades your working memory and tightens your muscles.
So you're literally making things worse.
It literally ensures your next swing will be worse. The source material brings in a powerful concept to counter this, stating that God keeps no record of our wrongs if we repent. And regardless of your theological background, the underlying psychological mechanism is what matters here. The key to peak performance is honest acknowledgement of the error, immediate and total forgiveness of yourself, and a rapid return to the present moment.
You do not drag the psychological baggage of the last tee box to the next shot.
You drop the baggage the second the ball lands.
It makes me think of the novelist Ann Tyler's observation from the text. She points out that people always call it luck when you have just acted sensibly over a long period of time.
That's such a great quote.
Isn't it? Sustained, quiet, unglamorous effort in the present moment, forgiving yourself for the misses, and just taking the next sensible step is what eventually compounds. To outside observers, that compounding effort looks like magic or overnight luck.
But that compounding only happens in the present tense. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson captures this beautifully when he writes, "The sky is the daily bread of the eyes."
I love that imagery.
He's pointing out that beauty, renewal, and the opportunity to begin again are constantly available to us right now, in this exact microsecond, if we are simply present enough to receive them. But if your brain is stuck 10 minutes in the past, agonizing over a missed shot, or spinning out into the future with anxiety, you are blind to the sky.
You miss the actual life unfolding in front of you.
Exactly.
It completely redefines the concept of patience for me. Patience isn't just sitting around passively waiting for your circumstances to improve. Patience is actively keeping a good attitude while you are waiting. It is executing the unglamorous work today without obsessing over the outcome tomorrow. It's doing the work and letting go of the result.
The interior battle is fought and won entirely in the present moment.
So let's pull all these threads together. We set out today to understand the topography of this interior battle, and we've discovered that the crushing weight we feel isn't the world outside, it's our own hypolepsis, our own assumptions.
It's all in our heads.
We've seen that the enemy is resistance, which uses our biological hunger for the velvet rut to paralyze us. The victory comes from the deliberate decision to show up anyway. It is Toni Morrison sitting down at her desk at 11 p.m., overwriting her exhaustion with deep purpose.
And it is Marcus Aurelius putting on the purple cloak of leadership even though he's weeping with fear.
Yes, it is committing to the molecular alignment of daily practice, and ultimately it is releasing your desperate, white-knuckled grip on the outcome so your true capabilities can finally surface.
And if we are looking for a final, enduring image of what that ultimate release looks like, the sources point us to the final days of Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD. We actually have the closing lines of his Meditations, written as he was physically failing and facing his own death.
What did he write?
He reflects on his life as a citizen in a great city. He notes that whether you are permitted to live in the city for 5 years or 100, the laws of the universe make no distinction. And when you are finally sent away, you aren't being dismissed by an unfair tyrant, but by nature itself, the exact same force that invited you in.
Wow.
He accepts his departure from life with total, unflinching grace. It is the absolute highest expression of trusting the process, of letting go of the human need to control what happens next, and simply playing the lie you were given.
Leaving the stage with the exact same grace you were shown when you entered it. We've covered immense ground today, mapping out everything from the trenches of Jerusalem to the fairways of a golf course. I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over as you go back to your day. We've established that life is fundamentally a game of misses, and that immediate self-forgiveness is the mechanical key to returning to the present moment. I want you to think about a specific miss in your life right now, a past failure, a rejected project, a bad decision you made years ago. Are you currently using the memory of that miss as a comfortable excuse to stay hiding in your own velvet rut? What would actually happen if you simply forgave yourself for that bad swing today, walked right up to the ball, and took your next shot?